So I would show up to events and I didn't know anyone. And because I'm an introvert, I had a hard time figuring out how do I break into the conversations where people have known each other for years. And so it was awkward. And as much as I tried to get over it,
Nicole Campbell has figured out how to capitalize on social media, specifically LinkedIn, to better her career. You don't want to hear it from me, so let's hear it from her. Starting in 4, 3, 2, 1. Bam! All right, Nicole, so I recently saw that you posted on someone's LinkedIn post about the furthest you've ever run, or something that you had tried to accomplish, and you tried doing a marathon at some point, and for whatever reason you didn't finish. Like, take me back to that. Like, what happened there?
I was not a DNF. I did finish. However, it took probably about 4.5 or 5.5 hours, whatever it was. It was a really long time. So I'll take you back.
You didn't finish in their time constraints.
No, I finished in their time constraints, but it was a long time for me because I'm super competitive.
Gotcha.
So I wanted to do it faster. So I got to Virginia Beach in 2014, and one of the first things that we did is we saw that there was a marathon in Virginia Beach, right? And a friend of mine from Montana had flown in to do this marathon, and we were new to the area, and we're like, you know what, we've got to support our friend from Montana. We live in Virginia Beach, and we saw her do this marathon. We cheered her on I think it was like at the halfway point. And I turned to my husband and I said, okay, we've got to do a marathon. We've got to do this. This is just something we've got to check off our list. We were short distance runners. We did strength training and stuff at the time, so we weren't doing a ton of running anyway. So after that moment, and we decided we were going to do it, then we started training. And, I'll use that loosely because I looked some stuff up. I thought I'd make up my own things. I think the furthest I ran in training was probably 15 miles, maybe 18 miles, something like that. And I did that for about 8 months before the actual marathon. And I competed in a half marathon along the way, and I'm like, okay, I crushed those goals for as far as finishing the half marathon. And then we get to DC for the actual marathon, and I probably get to mile 15 with the hills, and I was dying because Virginia Beach is flat, and I only trained on the flat terrain. So the hills were killing me. The atmosphere was not helping whatsoever. People were way too upbeat and I was dying, and that wasn't helpful for me. So I walked a lot. I sat down a couple times. I wanted to call the emergency vehicle over to help me, but I didn't. So I finished, but my husband finished probably 2 hours before I did. And when he was in the massage tent, recovering, and I still hadn't made it back, he thought something had happened to me. But I did it. I finished within their time constraints. I checked it off my list, and I will never run a marathon again.
26.2 miles in the books.
Yes.
So
yes.
The reason I wanted to talk about this is because, number one, I can't remember if I've told you, but I'm doing a marathon in like a month or so. But I love the parallels between fitness and business, or fitness in one's careers. And so you used a couple of words that I think are up my alley. So you're super competitive. So how does that help you in business? And then also be thinking about like training, right? So you didn't train in the right atmosphere. You didn't like, we're going after, and in running, I think it's very interesting. So like you did 15 or 18 miles, but you still had, 8 or, I can't do math, 8 or 10 more miles to do, and then hills. And so like, how do you put yourself into a scenario where you can compete in those constraints, if you will, when you don't have those in your own kind of backyard? So the competitiveness, and then kind of training, or the practice, if you will, to actually succeed.
Right. So I think for me, and this is just something that I've always had within myself, is that even if I have no idea what to do, how to do it, sometimes I would just kind of start, like I said, even with the marathon training, I looked up a little bit of stuff, but I thought, I know myself better. I'm going to try some things on my own and see how that goes. And so just kind of taking that and saying, well, if I have no idea what to do, can I find some resources? Of course, I'll find some, but then I try to kind of alter those two to make sure that they fit into the way that I do business, the way I learn, the way that I put myself out there, because we're all different. So there can be some guidelines for people for training and different things, but you have to know yourself, and you have to know how you will be able to take that and just use those guidelines and then go from there and put it into the way that you do things. So that's kind of how I've always approached it. And with the competitiveness, I don't know, I've never seen that as something as, some people think it's negative, like sometimes you get too competitive and it kind of overshadows what the end goal is. But for me, the competitiveness is just a lot of times being competitive with myself, knowing what did I do yesterday and how can I be better today, and competing against that point and then getting better from there. And then looking at, in my industry, in commercial real estate, knowing that, well, how am I working to be better for my clients? And what did I learn yesterday that I can apply today or tomorrow, and keeping that kind of in my filing cabinet in my head, and just so kind of using all that together and forging my own way, but using some guidelines when I can.
I like that word, guidelines. And so it's, I read a book recently, listened. I believe it was Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. And he said something like, everyone's done everything, right? Everything has already been accomplished. But if you can do that same thing and learn from someone so you can skip a couple steps, that makes you better. So knowing that there's guidelines for everything, how did you take that concept with marathon running and then put it into your business career of commercial real estate? Like, how did you take those guidelines and understand that, hey, like, I need to sift through some of this to get a good understanding of where to start, but I have to do my own path. I have to make my own path as well.
Well, and I think it comes from the fact that I haven't been in commercial real estate my entire life. I've actually started about 4 years ago, and sales is not something that I would say that I automatically gravitate towards. And so a lot of the training that I received as I got started was more about sales techniques and closing techniques, and how to find a lead and convert that to a sale. And so to me, because that's just not the personality that I have to have that strong sales mindset, then I knew that I could take pieces of that and figure out then how to translate it into the way my personality. So I'm a little introverted. I'm an extroverted introvert, I guess, if that's a thing. And
oxymoron.
So, yeah. But so I'm at the age now where I know my strengths, and same thing back to the marathon training. I know my strengths. I know, that I'm going to be able to go really hard for 5 miles and then take it easy for a mile and then go really hard for another 2. And so it's just like knowing yourself, knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, and then how to play to those things. And then just coming back to basically, well, what have other people done that worked for them in all types of scenarios? So the people who are really strong with that charisma and the sales techniques, what can I take from them and see what they've done that I can sort of tweak that will work for me, and that's going to be genuine, because that's what I'm finding is that as long as I'm my genuine self and that I have knowledge in the market and knowledge of the processes, that's really what is working for me. And that might not work for everybody, but it's just me being myself and being comfortable with myself that's helped me be successful.
Great. A lot to dissect there. Okay, so 4 years into commercial real estate, and your background before that was not in selling anything.
No, I was in residential real estate before that. So that was kind of an interesting thing too, because I started in marketing for a real estate team and then got my license and kind of worked behind the scenes and then did my own thing in residential real estate briefly. So Yes, I had that background, but I never went through training for residential real estate. I just kind of did it.
Is there a big difference between residential and commercial?
There isn't, mostly because in residential real estate, we have state dictated forms and contracts and things like that. So it's pretty much a kind of a fill in the blank. It's knowing obviously what the market is and what's going on and what you can get away with, but at the same, or as far as negotiating, but it's the same thing over and over again. Where in commercial real estate, every single deal is different. We don't have set forms typically. We've got attorneys involved. We've got all these other entities involved that have much bigger say in what we do than on the residential side of things. And the residential is a much quicker turnover. So you could meet a buyer for the first time, go out, see some houses, put in a contract, close in 30 or 45 days, and it's done. Commercial real estate, the timeline is much, much longer. It can go from you meet somebody, they're ready to transact, but they don't actually get a lease done until 18 months later. So it's just the timeline's a lot stretched out.
Wowzers, 18 months. That's a totally different ballpark.
Yeah.
So do you think that learning in residential world helped you get more comfortable in the commercial world, or was there a big learning curve in that kind of piece? Like what you learned selling to an individual or to a couple to buy a house, could you use those same kind of strategies in the commercial and business world?
Well, so I'll tell you, the reason I got out of residential is because there's so much emotion involved with that couple, as it should be. That's a very large purchase for them. It's where they're going to live. And so because it was such an emotional decision, that for me was not very appealing. And I did struggle with helping people overcome those things and selling to that type of decision making. Whereas in commercial real estate, there's a lot more like who's pulling the purse strings and what's the bottom line. And the decisions made a lot of times just based on the numbers. And so learning that I do better in that type of scenario, and I guess my brain just works better that direction and be able to lay things out. I was able to take what I didn't like about residential and figure out then how to put that into finding a different avenue, I guess.
And it's interesting because if you think about it, the emotional side of buying a home, mm-hmm. and then you just think of, well, the commercial side of that is it's just a business transaction and it's, black or white. It's yes or no. And so, yes, there's emotions in the business side of things, but I guess what you're saying is a business, it's easier for a business to be like, we're not going to get emotionally tied to that thing the same way that, a homeowner would in that mm-hmm. case.
Yeah. And so, but then there's the dynamic that I'm finding because I work almost specifically in office leasing and office sales. So you've got the folks who are going to be in the office 8 hours a day. And usually they're the ones that we're searching for space. And so they have one set of expectations and they do have emotion when it comes to the decision making, but they're not the ones typically who are making the money decisions. So as much as that, I can help them through the process and help them, I think back to my residential days of let's just see past what is going on right now. Let's use an open mind and think past how this office looks at the moment so that they can help then guide their person who is the decision maker, who does have the money, the boss, the business owner, they guide that decision. So it's kind of a dynamic of both. But at the end of the day, it's always it's black and white. It's yeah. My employees didn't love this space, but it makes sense.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So the person, paying for it is making the ultimate decision. So
right.
They care about their teammates. However, that I don't know that the rec room with a basketball hoop isn't really going to make the cut, and that's it.
Exactly.
So you and I have met once before, and we've talked online a handful of times, and I think the world of retail and real estate is changing. It has been changing. A lot of people would say that's because of Amazon, and we're moving towards more of a entertainment or customer experience based economy in these kind of spaces. Is that the ongoing future, you think, or is that just like something in the meantime?
I think that's the future. And so while I don't deal specifically with the retail side of things, it's still a big part of knowing the market and knowing what people are looking for, because it does translate over to the office world as well. But I think we've gotten so far. We went so far one direction with let's automate everything and let's, talk to computers online and on the phone. And people, I think, are dying for that human connection. They just really, really want that any way that they can get it these days because we're so far removed from it. So anybody that's able to offer that in their retail store, or even if it's a lot of times it's like video, like if you can connect with somebody on video that maybe wouldn't have an opportunity to just go into a store, but now they feel like they relate to whatever is happening in the store because they've seen it in the video. It just makes it a little bit easier than for them to jump to the transaction side of things. So I think people want the human connection and the experience. So whoever's able to offer that, and it's not going to end, I think. And actually, so I was talking to Josh Hill. I don't know if you know him. So I was talking to this guy, and he's in marketing, and he had cited a study about how millennials are more on that track anyway. So they already make decisions based on the experience. And so because we've got such a huge group of millennials coming up, and I guess is it Gen Z, then one below them or whatever it is, and then whoever's below them, they make those decisions too based on the experience. And so we've got this huge group of people they want the experience and they are going to have the buying power or the influence. And so it's just going to continue. It's not going to go away.
How do you learn from a good or a bad experience that you've gone through where you've made a transaction and take that kind of scenario and replicate it for your customers or your prospects?
Oh, so how do I and I would say, you almost learn more from the bad experiences, I think. Well, I do. It seems like, and just knowing like how not to treat people or how not to go through the process, and then lean in more towards, if I felt bad in this experience, how do I make sure that I never do that to anybody? And so this is kind of an ongoing theme and it's not just horrible, but it's the communication side of things. And knowing that if I don't have communication with whoever it is that I'm working with, maybe it's a broker on the other side or a landlord or whoever, and they're just not communicating. And it's either I just want an answer, yes or no. I go into it really as much as I can saying, well, I don't like feeling that way and not having the communication part of it. So I go above and beyond to try to make sure that I'm communicating as much as possible, and that a client will hear from me first before they have to reach out to me, or that I'm just, even sometimes if it's over communicating. But in our industry, I feel like we've lost that somewhat, as far as like, oh, you can just shoot off an email or you can ignore an email. That's what I find. A lot of times people just ignore emails. Just send in, just say yes or no. Just tell me you're working on it or whatever. So
yeah, be a human. My response to that is like, do the things that humans want, right?
Right.
Like it's sure, automate the things that can be automated, right? Provide someone a receipt that can be automated. But like, if you need to make a phone call to someone, make a phone call to someone. And I find that over communication, just like you're saying, is a positive thing, right? The last thing you want to do is lose an opportunity because you sucked at communicating when you were thinking about communicating with that person, but you just didn't pick up the phone and be like, oh, hello, Nicole, how are you today? Right? It's like, it's not hard. Pick up the phone, send them an email, whatever it is, but don't under communicate, over communicate.
Right.
You talked about your strengths and weaknesses as something that you very much know what those are. How are you understanding what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and how are you analyzing those to see if it's an accurate depiction of what you think they are?
How am I analyzing that? So I have a partner that I work with. Her name's Krista Costa, and she does a really good job of letting me know if one of my weaknesses are coming through. So that's a good way to make sure that I'm not just relying on myself and what I think I'm doing well or not doing well. having somebody else who has been in the business for a while, a long time actually, and that we have a good enough relationship where we can share that kind of information with each other. And really just some self-reflection as you go through the day, thinking about, okay, well, how did things go? And not over analyzing to the point where, you're just paralyzed with, oh my gosh, oh, what did they think? Or how did I do? But just going through the day and saying, oh, well, yeah, I know that because I'm weak in this area, I probably should have asked somebody else sooner to help me out with this, or maybe I could have presented things a little bit better if I had been more prepared because I know this is a weakness, or whatever the case is. It's just kind of reflecting throughout the day, throughout the week on things that are happening. And then again, working with my partner and just making sure that we're communicating with each other about how things are going.
What is the difference between a while and a long time? you just said a while, no, a long time. So I'm wondering, like, what's the difference?
Well, a while is like a day. A long time is a week.
Okay, both of those answers are not what I thought at all.
I have to say this too, and sorry to interrupt, but so I claim Texas as where I'm from. So we say in Texas a while ago, or actually a while ago. So you did that when you did that a while ago? And I didn't realize until I was an adult that it's actually a while ago. So, and I only lived in Texas for 6 or 7 years, something like that, when I was a kid. But that's where I graduated high school. And so I'm glad I actually said it to where you could understand what I was saying.
Yeehaw.
Yeah.
So my sister has 2 kids, and on that same kind of side note is one of her kids is now learning the ABCs, and apparently kids think that LMNOP is one letter.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting. So a while ago, or whatever that was that you said,
yeah.
LMNOP, things that you learn as you get older, right? That there's not 21 letters in the alphabet, there's actually 26. So there you go. Congrats on that. So I've seen you post a lot on social, and it seems to be picking up some steam. Is there a strategy that you're trying to do that? Because you've only been doing this for a few years, and so I'm sure that you want to grow into be a bigger mogul, if you will. What's something that you're kind of looking at from a social standpoint that's helping you kind of get in front of people, and how is that helping you achieve shorter term goals to ultimately hit those kind of longer time goals?
Right. So social, and specifically LinkedIn for me, because I have been in commercial real estate for almost 4 years, but a portion of it was spent behind the desk learning the business as an administrator. So I worked for one of the owners of the company and the office leasing team, and I was learning behind the scenes, but I didn't go out and do any networking. I didn't talk to anybody about any of this stuff because that's not what my focus was at the time. I was just trying to learn the business. So when I got back into the brokerage side of things, and I'm not from Virginia Beach originally, I hadn't been out in the world networking, I knew I had to find a way to get my name out there to where when I meet somebody at an event, that now we already have a connection. We've kind of met online, and we've talked online, or whatever the case is, but now there's a connection there before I meet them in person. And I knew I had to kind of accelerate that. So for me, LinkedIn, posting videos and just what I know about the market, what's happening in my day to day, has gotten my name out there. So I have constantly people telling me, oh, I saw what you did on LinkedIn. I really like that video. And this is in person. So now it's given me a way to have a conversation with someone who maybe wouldn't have spoken to me in the past. And so that's opened up a lot of doors for me already. They've seen me there online. They know that I know what I'm talking about when I'm doing my videos and my posts and everything. And then it makes it easier for them to say, oh, I know somebody who needs office space, or I need office space. I know you're the person to go to, or just, I want to know who you are because I see you everywhere. Let's chat. And so I've been able to meet a ton more people in a shorter period of time than I would have if I was just relying on going to events when I could, once or twice a month. So it's been phenomenal for me.
Yeah, I believe that using and capitalizing and leveraging the internet is, something that it has to be paired with in-person stuff too, right? And especially when you have a career that does have, an in-person feel, it's how can you capitalize on the internet stuff with the in-person stuff. So when you were a nobody moving here, when did you move to Virginia Beach?
6 years ago.
Okay, 6 years ago. And then you didn't start networking until how long ago?
I really start hitting it in August.
In August. So we're looking at
2019.
August, like 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So were there a lot of fears in networking? Is that why you didn't do it before? Or what was kind of the genesis of why?
Yeah, so I would show up to events and I didn't know anyone. And because I'm an introvert, I had a hard time figuring out how do I break into the conversations where people have known each other for years. And so it was awkward. And as much as I tried to get over it, it just was really, really difficult. So I had to evaluate again my strengths and weaknesses. And I knew that there were things that I could do to put myself out there that would help me get over that hump and help me then, well, at least if I know one person because I've met them from a coffee, because I met them from LinkedIn, now I can go into an event. And almost every time these days, it's me now introducing other people. I'll be the one, instead of me having to break into a conversation, now I'm helping others meet people. And yeah, it was a fear, and it was real.
In only 6 short months too, so that's cool.
Yeah.
So what did you do when you were, 6 months ago you were an introvert and now you're this, social media extrovert? What was some of the things that you would do to break through, to feel more comfortable in those settings so quickly?
So are you talking about in person?
Yeah, so like you said that you would show up at a networking event and you'd be like, hello people, I have no idea who you are. Like what broke the ice, if you will?
It started with, I would talk to somebody on LinkedIn and then I'd say, hey, I'm going to be at this event. Let's meet up there. And then I already know that somebody's going to be there that I can talk to. And then typically either they already know some people too that they can introduce me to, or then I realize because I'm out of that fear zone, that I look around and say, oh, wait, I do know some of these folks now. So it literally started like that. Like, we're going to be at the same event. Let's make sure and hook up together.
Yeah, I love that strategy. I think I even wrote about that in an Anomaly. I have no idea. I forget what I wrote about 2 years ago. But it's basically like get the contact list of who's going to be at this event, or invite people to this event that you want to meet. And that was the hard part. And you did that behind a screen. So then when you see that person, hopefully that makes it a little bit easier for you.
Yeah.
And then were you like that fangirl, or you saw someone, you're like, hi, how are you? I saw you on the internet. Like,
I've done that one time with a local foodie guy, and I saw him out and I was like fangirled. I'm like, oh my God, I watch your food videos all the time. And like but not at networking events.
Who was that person?
He goes by, oh shoot, what does he go by? Yummo Bucko. Have you heard?
Nope.
Nope.
Yummo Bucko.
Yummo Bucko. Yep.
Right, I'm gonna look that up. That sounds really exciting. Yummo Bucko, how are you? Hello.
Yeah.
So why LinkedIn? Why was that the platform that you decided to try to win on?
Because that's where my people are. So business owners, colleagues, people who are serious about being professional and business, but at the same time, people who were, what I'm finding is that it's also the people who are hustling and grinding. We're all kind of there in that same environment where, so I had been on Instagram and Facebook and everything, but that just, it wasn't where my target market was. So I knew I needed to just go to where my people were, and that's LinkedIn.
You talked about how, a couple of years ago you were doing residential, and that turnaround could be within a matter of days, right? 60 days or less, 45 days or less. Now on the commercial side of it, it can be 18 months, many,
Mm-hmm.
many months. How do you emotionally, physically, every kind of word possible, like stick with it, knowing that that game takes a long time? Like, how do you like not get so negative in that where the turnaround isn't quick enough?
Well, I think the key is to let yourself get negative just a little bit and realize, it's stressful um, and it can wear on you because it's 100% commission based, right? So knowing that your livelihood and your paycheck depends on deals getting done and giving yourself a little bit of freedom to say, yeah, you know what, this sucks today. Um, but then at the same time, going into every interaction, also knowing that I have to be my best self because it's not just about me. It's about that business owner. It's about that tenant, that landlord, that building owner. And that since it is bigger than me, you can be negative a little bit every once in a while and because you're human, but then you just be a nice, good person and do good things and it'll come, right? So it's one of those things where it is super stressful and I don't want to pretend like it's not. And there's days when I just collapse when I get home and close my eyes and I don't want to, even talk to anybody. But then you just get up and you go to work the next day and you deal with it. I try to go to the gym. You mentioned physical. So my New Year's resolution was to get to the gym 260 days out of the year. And yeah, I'm a little behind, but just making time for that because I know I've been in that world long enough to know that the physical part of it and being healthy helps tremendously with the emotional side of things and handling it on that side.
It's wild how physical activity helps everything else. I've
Mm-hmm.
basically worked out every day since January 2nd, 2018, so over 2 years.
That's awesome.
And before it was like, a handful of days here or there. I'm not a big fan of New Year's resolutions because I feel like it's really easy to get over them. Also, the best month to ever start something is February because you only have to do 28 days.
Ah,
Little hack you got there.
yeah.
But it's amazing how sweating fixes everything. And so it's crazy. So when you go home and curl up in a ball, are you listening? And when you're having a bad day, are you listening to Taylor Swift or like what's your go-to music during that?
21 Pilots. And
21
I just
Pilots.
have
Okay.
21 Pilots on Pandora. And so almost everything that comes up there either has a good beat or, um, yeah, it's just, and I usually crank it up. And then, of course, Panic comes on with that. And let's see, who else? Lizzo is my new go-to. She's
Everyone loves
amazing.
Lizzo.
Yeah.
Uh, it's it's really interesting to see her backstory and how that's working too. So mad props to her. Um, you have a military background,
I do.
and how has what you went through there helped you in kind of your business career?
So I was in the Army for 3 years, um, 19 years ago at this point. So I've been out for almost 2 decades. And in the whole scheme of things, 3 years is not that long, right? What I learned from that, though, was being prompt. So if you're not 15 minutes early, you're late. And if you're not 15 minutes early, the first sergeant calls you out in front of the whole formation and makes you do push-ups. And that's an easy way to learn to be on time. Um, and then really just, it's funny because I was thinking about this morning that at that stage of your career, when you're in the military for that short period of time and you're an enlisted person, you learn how to follow directions. You don't really have a lot of opportunity to find solutions to problems until you get higher ranking. And I didn't get, because I was in such a short period of time, I didn't get to be like a really high rank to where I was the one making decisions so much. But just again, looking at, well, what are these leaders doing that I don't like, that I feel like are not good leadership qualities? And how would I, if I was a leader, how can I take that and say, well, no, I don't want to be like that. Um, and yeah, I got really good at following directions, which is good to a point. It's obviously in this type of field, you have to be able to come up with solutions for things and be creative. But at the same time, there are still things that you have to follow. There are rules. There's, the state says you have to do certain things in real estate transactions. So that's helpful too.
It's interesting, and obviously I think that everyone should stand out and be wild and crazy and all that stuff. However, there are really small strategies that you can do that actually will get someone's more respect from someone, like being on time, right? Mm-hmm. Following up, and doing things that should be really easy, yet be courteous, say please and thank you and things like that. Like doing stuff like that can actually move the needle towards a yes or a no. And I think more people should go back to the things that our parents hopefully taught us, and that can do well there. Back to LinkedIn, is there a strategy that you've used to get in front of people that don't know you? Like, is it using specific hashtags? Is it doing a specific type of content? Like, how are you capitalizing on LinkedIn to get in front of people without necessarily direct messaging them beforehand?
So actually what I've done that works even better than my own content a lot of times is finding people who are posting interesting things and then asking them questions and giving them an opportunity to really show their expertise in something, or to find out, are you my local person in this area for this field? And then that opens a conversation. And a lot of times, even when I respond to somebody's post, if it's a company, I've had people then from that company see that and then reach out to me and say, oh yeah, you would be a really good person to know. So it's one of those things where it's not always what I'm doing on my own page, it's what I'm doing on other people's pages.
So give me an example of reaching out to someone and asking them questions. Like what's one that's worked really well for you recently?
So it was a guy in the roofing industry, and he had posted something about a specific type of roof that seagulls would tear apart. And so I thought, well, he's not in my area, but he is talking about something that we potentially would have an issue with because we have the seagulls, right? And so I don't know anything about roofing, but it seemed interesting. And he posted a little bit, but not a ton. And so I thought, you know what, I want to ask him a question. So now he can respond with something a lot more bigger.
Words, they're hard. Substantial?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking
about? Yeah. And so
I failed English, so don't feel bad.
So I just, on his post, I said, hey, this is really interesting. I could see where this would be a problem. Are there other types of products that people should use instead of this? And so then he was able to follow up with something, and he looked like, obviously he was an expert, but to me it was, I learned something, and I felt like his audience could learn something. And then he wanted to connect with me because he felt like, hey, you really care about what we're doing here. And I'm all about learning too. So about stuff I'm not ever going to need to know exactly what type of roof. I would leave that up to somebody, but I just enjoy learning about that kind of thing. So that, and then just asking questions about people who I know are going to be useful to me potentially as far as resources for my clients. So people who do paving, I'm going to find something they've posted and ask them details about that. And it just kind of does a workaround where they are now wanting to meet me or learn more about me because I've gone through that effort to learn about them and what they're doing.
I love that. I think it's not always what's directly on the surface. It's a couple layers deep, right? And so, whether or not pigeons are going to ruin a roof or not, that's not something that comes up normally, right? Or that isn't the first thing that someone thinks of. And so going that deep in, I think is very valuable. What's something that, as of the recording of this, January 23rd, 2020, scares the crap out of you?
Something that scares the crap out of me today, as of today, not making the goals that I set for myself for the year, knowing how hard I'm working right now. I'm scared that I won't be able to sustain that, because I didn't really take any time off during the holidays. I've been working my butt off, and for the past year or so when I got into brokerage, and I've set goals for myself, but it scares me thinking that I'm going to work really, really hard and still not be able to make those goals because it's out of my control. And for better or for worse, I mean, it's a commission job and that's how it is, but that scares me, putting all of my energy into it and then still not reaching the goal.
So there's a notion of, work smarter, not harder, don't work 24/7. Like, you need to relax or whatever. Like, how do you then take what you just said with, I need my body to replenish, right? So like, you wouldn't run 24/7 for your marathon. You allowed yourself, rest and relaxation, maybe not the relaxation side of it, but like, how do you do that in your business career then, so that you aren't just going so hard, that you are able to amp yourself back up by recovering?
Well, it's taking the time to do things like some networking events that aren't all about, just constant business, that it's okay if we're having a happy hour, that it's really just a happy hour and we're just shooting the breeze and getting to know each other and having a drink and just doing what. Actually, though, I decided to stop drinking for the year too. So that was the other part of it. So I'll have a glass of water, but still just really saying, it's not all about business all the time, and giving yourself that. I think it's a mental break from it.
So 50% of your resolutions you're on at this point. So congratulations on that.
Yeah, thanks.
When I'm in training for a race, so I did an Ironman in the last summer, and then I'm doing this marathon. Like, I don't drink at all either. Like, this is not possible. Like, I tell people, I'm like, you can't even be a weekend warrior. Like, you need to be focused on that race, because one too many dilly-dillies will take you down, and that can be a bad thing. What's a post that you've seen from someone else that really resonated with you, that then you were able to kind of dissect and do yourself?
A post that I've seen, and so I follow a lot of commercial brokers who are not in this market, and there's a gentleman, I think in Louisiana, who really just took a moment to kind of show off where he was and just talk to the camera. And this was a while ago, so I feel like it's sort of what I'm doing now. I've altered it a little bit, but just seeing that he was himself. He wasn't trying to put on any airs. It wasn't anything fancy going on in the background or around him or anything like that. It was just where he was. He was having a conversation, and then he put it out there. So it's that type of thing that, since it resonated with me, I thought, well, I'm going to try this because I liked it. And if people like it, great. If they don't, that's fine too, because then that'll kind of help weed out. Like, you don't want to work with people that you don't like. And if you don't like how I present myself, then that's fine. No, it's not a problem.
That to me, then working with people that you don't like is like question number one, right?
Yeah.
If I don't like that person, I don't keep talking to them. They never get into my, quote unquote sales funnel, because I just don't want to work with them.
Right.
Why give donkeys your A game?
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
Was that post that this person in Louisiana posted like a non-polished type of thing? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, it wasn't anything professional. It looked like he just set up the camera, had somebody with the phone recording him, and it wasn't. So while I do appreciate the people who do put some time into professional pieces every once in a while, that where he was just himself, he wasn't doing anything crazy. There weren't explosions in the background or anything like that. That's what it was. And so that's what I feel like, again, going back to how people need that human connection, and seeing people just be real is appealing to me anyway.
Well, and I think now with this device that almost everyone that's probably listening or watching something like this, we all have a smartphone, right? It all has a camera that is probably good enough to do everything, right? And while a more polished video may be better, you can get to 80-90% of the way with just a cell phone. So it probably gets you there. What's something that we haven't talked a lot about today, or at all, that you think a lot about or talk about?
Let's see. I talk a lot about people who are startup businesses who really need commercial real estate services, but because of when I'm looking at the time spent to the amount of money made, unfortunately, because the way our business is, and I'm commission based, I have to look at, well, what do I anticipate that this is going to bring me in income? And does it make sense for me to work on this type of deal? And so I get questions all the time, and I try to help people as much as possible who are in kind of the startup world. They're looking for their first office space. And so I spend a lot of time answering questions for those folks, and they really want help and they really want somebody to hold their hand. But I'm just not able to do that. And I don't think a lot of people in our field can. So to me, it's one of those things where I wish I could be more for those folks, because I feel like they're the ones who need that more than anybody else. So that's something that I struggle with a lot and I think about a lot. Whether or not I should be worried about it, I don't know. But yeah, it's unfortunate.
So knowing that the way that you get paid though is by landing business, and then there's this other kind of subset of prospects, you know, I guess it could be an avenue where like you are educating them on this
Mm-hmm.
process and have them as a layer of the equation, but just not yet because they're not ready to buy in,
Or they are, but their budget is so small, or the term of lease that they would take, they want a shorter lease. And so because the way our commissions work is that we get paid a percentage on the total value of the lease. So if it's a 2-year lease and it's only $1,000 a month, it just doesn't translate into a very large commission at all. So yeah, I try my best to educate people for sure. And actually, you're making me kind of think about, well, is there an avenue then that I can sort of direct them to? Maybe I have a library of things, and here's some information for you. And it's not me talking to you on the phone and spending a lot of time with you, but here you can go and get the information there. So that's helpful. But then there's just so much more that goes into the process, and it's not just about finding the space, it's about negotiating. So there's a lot that goes into it that's so individual, and it's so, every deal is different and it's case by case. And so it's easy to say, okay, well, I'll put out this information, and it could be very general and it may or may not help people. And it needs to be more tailored to that individual person and what their business is and what they're going through.
Gotcha. What's something that on the forefront 5-10 years from now that no one's talking about in commercial real estate you want to say here today on my show that's like, oh, this is my bold thing, and this is gonna be the correct prediction?
Oh my God. Do you know that our market in general has not changed in like 20 years? So I'm going to go on record and say it's not going to be any different in 5 or 10 years in this area than it is now, because the history has shown rates are about the same. There's not a lot of new people coming in. What I would love to be able to say is that regionally or individual cities or something, that they figure out how that they want all these young people to come back after they leave and go to college, and they're like, oh, we want them to come back, that they've actually figured out how to do that, and that there's some affordable housing, and that has nothing to do with commercial real estate, except for the fact that maybe then those people who come back and they have great ideas, and then they start businesses, and then maybe some new kind of business can be in the area, and that'll transform the way commercial real estate is done. But yeah, it's unfortunate. My daughter's at JMU. She would never be able to live here whenever on a salary of, or not even a salary, what is it, the minimum wage. Like, she couldn't afford to live here. There's no way. She'd have like 50 roommates, and I mean, that's one way to do it, but it's not affordable here, and people keep talking about, oh, we want all these young people to come back. Well, got to figure that out.
So it's interesting that you talked about affordability and things like that. Like, people like flock to New York City and they live with 3-4 roommates. So what's the difference there?
I don't know. I guess, yeah, I don't know. That's a good point.
Yeah,
That's a really good point.
and obviously you and I have never talked about this. My
Right.
thought is that we come up with these thoughts that just like that, like affordable housing isn't affordable, and that person needs to live in like a 4-bedroom house on their own, all these things where it's like, well, there's plenty of other cities where in that time frame of their age, they're living with other people. And that's just, I guess, the norm. But yeah, I mean, it would be great to see more things, more action happening here, like you said, over the next 20 years. But nothing is showing, I guess, like you're saying, that's going to change.
Right. Yeah.
And I would say, actually, the military stipend is probably one of the biggest hindrances to the growth from the real estate area of this, where most people are getting, most in the military are getting a minimum $1,500 of housing allowance.
Right.
So that drives apartments and housing costs up to that almost minimum $1,500. When if you compare that with the median income of 42 grand, if you will,
right,
that is where I think that struggle is. So who knows? We'll see.
Yeah.
What's something like something in the water that's been so incredible for the area? How do you see something like that positively affecting over the next 10, 15, 20 years, or something where there's a lot of people seeing an area where maybe historically they hadn't?
Yeah, and I think that's the point that they made, is that not enough big businesses or the types of businesses that that they would like to attract here had even looked in our area. And so I think having that visual and having somebody like Pharrell do what he's doing is fantastic. But then we've got to, it can't just be him. It can't just be his one thing. It's got to now be people who are expounding on that and making an effort to, I mean, and not to say that the cities aren't obviously trying to attract all these other big businesses and stuff, but I don't know. I look around to places like Charlotte, North Carolina, and it's just a different type of infrastructure. It's a different type of city. But they have all these, the major sports teams, and then they have where they're trying to attract all this different stuff. And I don't know if it's because of where they are in the country, and the problem is that we're so close to the water and it kind of cuts some things off. I don't know, and honestly, I haven't been here long enough to say, how those struggles have translated and what people have done, in the past to try to overcome that. And just, I think being positive about where we are and the region that we're in, and figuring out a way to put it out there to folks. And looking at the commercial real estate too, we just don't have a lot of places to build new buildings. Chesapeake has some land, but there's all these zoning issues with different cities and what they are willing to do and not do. And so, and Portsmouth is a place where they have a lot of land, but you can't build on it. So it's just that type of thing. Like we have to kind of work within the confines that we have, and you can't throw up all these giant buildings like you can in New York because of the zoning issues. So I don't know.
Got to get creative in this cornucopia called, well, I don't know what this area is called, but I got you. So support where you can. Appreciate that. If people were to contact you, or you wanted people to find you, where do you want me to link you to them?
First to LinkedIn. So my profile there, and I think it's Nicole Campbell 1. I think I was the first Nicole Campbell. Yeah, I was the first one ever. But then aside from that, my email address is Nicole, Nicole .Campbell, Campbell, just like the soup, at divaris.com. And Divaris is Divaris. Typically, that's the best way to reach me. LinkedIn, I'm always on there to see the messages and stuff. So if people want to message me there, that's great.
Nicole Campbell without the S, like the soup.
Right.
At divaris.com. Gotcha. Did I wear the hat? I don't know. Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of Zack Miller Says. It's been an absolute pleasure, an honor, and an absolute... I don't know why people say that. Look, I just appreciate you listening to this episode. And I have this exclusively free, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for you right now. It's simple. All you have to do is go to zackmillersays.com/newsletter to get my once a week email directly to your email client, whatever you use, like Gmail, Yahoo, AOL. Yeah, you could probably still use that, but it's a once a week, easy to dissect and execute tips, tricks, things I'm thinking about, some content that I've been working on, some entertainment, and sometimes even The Rock makes an appearance. I'd love for you guys to check it out. It's super free. All you have to do is go to mynamesays.com/newsletter. That's Zack, Z-A-C-K. Please don't spell it Zach. ZackMillerSays.com/newsletter, and you'll get that access every Monday morning, 10:15-ish Eastern Standard Time. It will take up like 90 seconds of your day, and it might actually even help you. We'll just keep it at that. It might just help you, because if I said something else, then I'd have to actually deliver on that. It might help you. ZackMillerSays.com/newsletter is the go-to one-stop shop to your weekly email newsletter needs. Check it out at ZackMillerSays.com/newsletter. Peace and pancakes. Bye-bye now.